What was the worst job interview you've had? Showed up looking good in my suit with a ton of knowledge on Capital Partners. It turned out I had researched the wrong company named Capital Partners. I was interviewing for a job in Houston and lived in Austin, about 2.5 hours away. I drove to Houston for the first round of interviews, and they said it went well and wanted me to be in for a final interview, so I drove there again. It seemed like it went well, and they told me they had one more interview to conduct and would have a decision tomorrow. So the next day came and went. I emailed the manager to ask if any decision had been made. Nothing. Waited a couple more days, left a voicemail, nothing. Then a couple days later, I just called the main number for the company and told the receptionist why I was calling. She was like, "Well, someone just started in that job yesterday." They ghosted me after I drove a total of 10 hours to interview twice. Still salty about that 11 years later. Had an interview, went well. I was offered the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork, came back 10 minutes later and said, "I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry, but we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up." I said, "No, thank you." Video chat interview. Red flag number 1. The interview was with 10 interviewers. Red flag number 2. Towards the end, they asked if I had any questions. When I asked, "Do you all enjoy working here?" They all looked at each other nervously for about 20 seconds until someone said, "Sure. I mean, as much as you can enjoy work, I guess." "Nope, thanks." I told them I couldn't answer their questions, farted audibly out of stress, and thanked them for their time. Yeah, I have one that sticks out. I applied to a government branch as a network admin. The newspaper ad asked for a bachelor's degree. They called me into the interview. When I got there, the first thing the interviewer said was, "We wanted someone with a master's degree. Why did you apply?" Now, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had other interviews that day and got them mixed up. Shit happens. I just informed the interviewer that the ad I applied for requested a bachelor's degree and confirmed the position I was interviewing for. No, we definitely wanted someone with a master's degree. So again, why did you apply? If you wanted someone with a master's degree, why did you bother calling me in for an interview? You're very rude and unprofessional. Yeah, you fucked up at every junction thus far, but I'm the one who's rude and unprofessional. I went in to apply for an administrative assistant position, and the guy kept asking me questions about liking kids and are my passports up to date and etc. I was so confused. Turns out what he really wanted was a nanny for his 2 young kids to travel with him and his wife back to India. I was so pissed he wasted my time. I noped right the fuck out of there. Started as the worst and ended as the best. The beginning started like this. "I'm so sorry to have to inform you of this, but we pulled the wrong resume contact information. We didn't mean to call you in for an interview." Before leaving, the interviewer gave me a brief tour of the company grounds because they felt so bad for wasting my time. They introduced me to the department head that I would have been working for, if that department was actually hiring. Had a great conversation, and the department head was convinced that I would be an asset to them, and they hired me on the spot. Realized it was a pyramid scheme halfway through the interview. I was already working, so didn't accept the job. I applied for an internship at a human rights law office. They gave me questions on the spot to debate with them like, should people accused of rape remain anonymous until convicted, and is bribery acceptable if it's for a good cause? It was me versus a panel of 5 senior human rights lawyers for a whole hour who just ripped me apart from start to finish. Everything I said, they made sound like the dumbest response with their rebuttals. By the end, I was a nervous babbling wreck. Did not get the internship, but did appreciate the experience in retrospect. When they got back to me, they told me, "Your CV was fantastic, so we were quite disappointed with how poor your interview was." 5 interview rounds, with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you weren't allowed to get sick, and you weren't allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8 to 4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 p.m. or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer, and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I didn't take the job. My first interview ever was at DQ, and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. It was my best interview. Great rapport with the interviewer. Gave me the job on the spot. It, for a transfer to QA at Johnson Control, came into work the next day to have the offer rescinded. The job was already given to the plant manager's niece, and it had only been posted because of company policy. The story is much longer and complicated afterwards, but it was the first of several times I had been promoted and then been told, never mind. I had a Skype interview with a private practice, and the lady interviewing me literally made it sound like a stern military parent. You can never be late. Even if you have a cold, you can never call in sick. We're a small company, so you won't have much of a work-life balance. Our pay for all this dedication is only $3 more than the measly pay you're getting now. Just a whole interview of red flags. And the last one was when the lady messaged me immediately after saying I got the job and had to leave my job at maximum 5 days notice, regardless of me kind of bombing the interview and claiming there were other interviewees in line. I could see why they were having trouble hiring people. Had a phone interview, and the woman kept asking more and more intrusive questions, kept hinting I'm a total piece of shit who's totally unfit for the job. It was the easiest job description ever, and jumping to conclusions about my life that were completely untrue. For example, I found out that being a freelancer who gets a lot of decently paid work each month is apparently living off my parents. She kept going on and on like that for quite a while before I told her to piss off and hung up. Didn't really need that job too badly, but it was in a different country, so the travel aspect was the main reason. Years later, I found out it was a stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Fuck those people. Had an interview at an office supply store once. Guy told me straight up it was a high-pressure sales quota job. Their prices on computers and peripherals were shit, and that's what I'd be selling. Dude straight up said, it's a lot of work for low pay. Not a lot of people enjoy working there. And he finished off with the fact that he's been there for 18 years. Practically ran out of that interview screaming, as the interviewee, I told them I hated salespeople when they asked why I'd left my last job, which exposed two things about me. I hadn't looked up the company I was interviewing with, and that their primary line of business was sales. The mood got chilly real fast after that. Did not get the job. As the interviewer, had a guy ask if it was okay if he went to the restroom real fast and then never came back. His recruiter who had come with him was super embarrassed by the whole thing. Honestly, he was a young kid who just graduated, and while he was getting some of the more in-depth technical questions wrong, he definitely was asking the right questions in return, so we probably would have brought him on entry level. I think he was experiencing a case of imposter syndrome since we were asking him things he didn't know, so he panicked. Hope he received some coaching on how to handle that. An interviewer told me that he worried I would be sexually harassed if I joined his team. The first question they asked was a statistics exam type question. Took me completely off guard. I half-assed the answer. A complete answer would have taken half an hour. The next question was about a Punnett square analysis. I answered honestly and said that the first thing I would do would be to look it up. Errors in Punnett squares are incredibly common, and I wouldn't trust anyone who said they could do it off the top of their head. I'd look it up even if I'd done one last week. They really didn't like that answer. They wanted to know where my husband worked and where we lived, and they concluded that our 6-month rental location was completely incompatible with the commute to their location. The whole thing was just super weird. It was like they sat down determined to find a reason they should not hire me. I was relieved to get out of there. When he said I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day, then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. Was not my month. An agency sent me for an interview and said the starting salary is £33,000. The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, so what sort of salary are you looking for? So using the information I had from the agency, I said, well, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point. The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary, and who did I think I was? He was paying £20,000. Maybe not the worst, but one that stands out. I was the interviewer, hiring for a position working with individuals with mental or physical disabilities. The person I was interviewing used the word retarded multiple times. I pointed it out after the second use, stating, this is a position working with people with disabilities. That is a word that is not tolerated in this environment. They shrugged it off. Maybe 2 minutes later, dropped it again. I stood up, thanked them for their interest, handed them back their resume, and told them I could already tell it wouldn't be a good fit and didn't want to waste their time, and walked them to the door.